year, but this is actually our oh, and there's a recording. Thank you. This is the first section leader support call of the year. We have them monthly. They should all be on your calendars. So every month except December. So if you don't find these on your calendars, please let Josh know. So why don't we go ahead and I'll invite Amber and Janice to see if you all have anything to kick us off, and then I'll get you through the agenda. So who wants to start?
Janice, please go ahead.
Oh, and you're on mute, I think.
Oh, I have to hear that once a day, that I'm on mute. So I just want to say hello to everybody. I don't have an agenda on what to say. I just want to join these meetings as often as possible so that I can get a sense of what you're thinking and what your issues are, and to support the great team that supports you. So Amber, Rosa, Josh, and everybody else, all of the rest of the staff, Greg, everybody who's on here, we're all committed to making your jobs as easy as possible and as productive as possible. So let us know what you need, and just happy Easter week for those of you who celebrate.
Thanks, Janice. Amber?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Welcome. It's good to see you. Thanks for everything you're doing. I think we've talked about this on every call, but I want to reemphasize it again, that we're really trying to better understand your section leader journey so that we can better partner with you and support you in the best way possible. So we're continuing to do that. We might outreach to a few of you individually really soon with some thoughts on what your journey looks like, so we can get some firsthand feedback from you. So look for that outreach soon. And then as you'll see today, we're going to go through the results of the section leader survey. And it was really, really clear that y'all wanted to hear about fundraising. So I hope you'll participate today. That's the topic today for the most part. So we're very much looking forward to that discussion.
All right, thanks, Amber. And I just wanted to reiterate, you may hear me say this a few times and heard me say it last year as well. I know there's been some feedback about what meeting is this versus what meeting is that. And what I mean is, this is the section leader support call. And right now, as it's configured, this is where we talk to section leaders. Mainly, we reach out to your executive committee. But if you have other folks who, based on the agenda, because we send the agenda out a week in advance, who you want to have added from your sections, certainly they are invited. But this is where we do a couple of things. One is really the operational day-to-day, if you want to call it that, work of a section leader, about budgets and event planning and fundraising, DEI. Just that's kind of what this is. So it is programmatic, but it's a little bit more kind of, how do you do the things you need to do, and how do we help you do that, and how do we also give you space to learn from each other on how you do these things as sections. So I also say that because as we talk about fundraising today as one of the main agenda items, we do want sections to speak up. Obviously, we've got the development team, Tracy, Vicky, who can jump in and kind of talk about things, but we want to hear from you. So again, that's kind of the setup for what these monthly meetings are. All right, so why don't we go to the slides, because I think we have a few of them. And by the way, in case you don't recall, you will get the slides and the recording emailed to you within 1 or 2 days after this is ended. Not just you all on the call, but the section leaders who could not attend will get this. So we're going to talk about the section leader support survey results. I'll go through that and then hand it over to Josh. We're also going to talk about fundraising, as you've heard us already say a few times, in open mics. So why don't we go to the next slide? Okay. So just a reminder, a lot of you hopefully filled out the survey. You remember earlier this year, we had kickoff calls we had like 4 different calls, or maybe it was 5, with bunches of section leaders to kind of talk about operationally what's kind of coming up this year and to get your input. So we fielded the survey early in the year. They helped us to inform those kickoff calls, the feedback, and will continue to inform us into the new year or this year. This is an annual survey that we do. And for the first time, I think in the last couple of years, every section, at least one person gave us feedback. So thank you for that. 39 responses in all. People could answer individually. It wasn't like one survey, one section. So, and the next steps are we're sharing this with you. We're sharing with selected senior staff at AGU to help inform the ongoing work. So let's go on. So there were some top overall themes across the full survey. I think there were 17 questions. So there's a lack of engagement with membership, especially early career members, is kind of what we saw in your feedback. I assume that's kind of from the sections wanting to interpret that as wanting to find a way to be more engaged and also talk to early career student members more. The other is that section leaders, you all are requesting more support and resources around fundraising and sponsorships. Thus our topic today. It doesn't end here, it starts here. And then thirdly, which I'm sure something that resonates and we heard from you, is that there's a lot of information you get from AGU. So we want to try and work with you to figure out how do we synthesize the information, get you what you need, maybe even get you what you need before you know you need it, so that we can be a little more proactive in helping you. So that's kind of the themes. And let's go to the next slide. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Josh. There are a lot of slides here for every question, so we've got limited time, so Josh isn't necessarily going to go through every slide, but you're going to get these slides, so you'll be able to see the feedback. So Josh, why don't you start?
Okay, so we broke these up. We have a slide for each question, and we broke them up into summary trends for you to help easily digest this. So this first question was on your section goals. So we have that broken up into membership, financials, and communication. And as Rosa mentioned, a lot of you had goals around wanting to grow your membership, stronger engagement, and increase diversity, increase and diversify nominations and awards. Let me go on to the next one quickly. And then what are your most pressing challenges as section leaders in the coming year? So again, there's growing membership, stronger engagement, recruiting volunteers. We had a lot of responses around understanding the budgets and the section incentive program. And then we saw a lot of responses for your own personal time management and information management for your position as a section leader, and understanding the number of section meetings required to attend, and planning annual meeting section events was also in a lot of your responses. And then here we have, what does success look like for you as a section leader? And again, we're hitting a lot of those main themes that Rosa mentioned. And then this one I thought was very interesting. Why did you decide to volunteer as a section leader? So a lot of you wanted to give back, build a stronger community, and represent your community. A lot of you had someone reach out to you and ask, or you thought it was a good opportunity to get involved. And then we had some responses around AGU, our reputation, and you consider this as your professional home. Next, we have how many hours a week you spend filling your section leadership responsibilities. Majority of you did have 1 to 5 hours. And then we had a few for 6 to 10 and one from 11 to 15. And then how would you rate your commitment to your section leader role? The majority of you do have very reasonable and somewhat reasonable. We do have a few that were in the middle, and several of them unreasonable or very unreasonable. And then what areas are you spending most of your time? Majority of you did put administrative responsibilities. And then next up were meeting, training, webinars, and event planning, outreach to sections, and managing section committees. And then here we have how prepared and informed were you when you took on your responsibilities as a section leader. Only 3 of you put very informed. A majority have somewhat informed, somewhat uninformed, and very uninformed, which hopefully will start putting together different resources, everything to help get more of you to be very informed moving forward. Then this is asking what topics would you like to discuss? Around membership, we have increasing volunteer engagement, membership communication, creating membership value, recruiting leaders for annual meeting. You have section event planning, how to make section events more attractive and fun, and then also annual conference spending. And under time and info, we had a lot of responses around cross-section collaboration, how to best spend your time and how to reduce the time load. And your overview for AGU, the AGU year, and managing section finance or files. I'm going to jump to the next question, which is, as section leaders, how satisfied have you been with AGU's support of your efforts? A majority of you put somewhat satisfied. We had 5 with very satisfied, and then we had 5 neither satisfied or dissatisfied, and somewhat dissatisfied. So hopefully we'll be putting together resources to help boost that as well. And then time operational support do you need for AGU to help fulfill those efforts? A majority of you put that you need resources around fundraising and sponsorship. And then AGU section events was next, and outreach to section members as well. And then this is just asking for those of you that put outreach to section members, what specifically would you like to have? And then for those of you that did fill that out, majority of you said newsletters and help with your micro. And then we revamped the financial reports that we send to you 3 times a year. And this is asking on your satisfaction on those new financial workbooks. So a lot of you had somewhat satisfied or neither satisfied nor dissatisfied. And then this is asking on how satisfied you were with the new process for the section receptions. Majority of you were satisfied and or somewhat satisfied. I did see a lot of responses in the additional feedback at the end of the survey with responses towards the ticketing of those events. And I have a feeling that's what a majority of the dissatisfied and somewhat dissatisfied were coming from. And then this is how helpful the one-on-one meetings were that we set up with your team and our section support team. So a majority of you did find those helpful. And then this is the further feedback that was at the end of the survey. So this was asking you to add any feedback that you had that wasn't discussed in the survey. So a lot of you under membership find a way to be more effective in connecting members. And then we need more we need to make AGU more accessible and create a sense of belonging. Regarding annual meeting, we had a lot of comments about clarity on section receptions. Again, the ticketing and the communication around that. Need training on what to do if sessions go awry. And then there were a lot of responses around transparency with AGU finances, not just with the section budgeting, but what all AGU is spending money on, especially around the receptions. And then there was also additional data around award winners, sessions, and abstracts. And then we had some additional comments on an easier way for you to communicate with your members during, through newsletters. And then more support for your section websites. And then again, fewer and more consolidated AGU communications that emphasize responses required and when they are required, and more information on who to reach out to for different input. And then that's it on the section survey questions. Are there any questions on that?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Any comments or questions? I mean, this is a summary, right? So it didn't include every line item where the narrative was provided, but trying to make sure we reflected some trends here. Any questions or comments before we move to the next topic?
It looks like Tanya Furman has her hand up.
Hey, I wanted to thank you for sharing this. And one of the messages that I hope you all take away, I am viewing sort of bringing in new section leaders as teaching freshmen, and that is that no matter how wonderful a job you have done in any one given year with sharing information, the people who come in the next year are still going to be new and are still going to need to learn everything, and that these same questions come up year after year about people feeling underprepared. I think it's just human nature, and I'm really grateful for the changes in the financial statement. I'm grateful for all the changes that you have made, so thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. We appreciate that. And we want to continue to hear from you all. I mean, a lot of the things that we do are based on ideas that come from you, and iterating on those ideas and working with you. So this is an opportunity, these meetings, but also, you know, in your other interactions with AGU, you should feel free to come up with things where we can help the section leaders do their work. Any other comments or questions? All right, and as Amber, oh, go ahead, Kimberly. Your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to also say thank you for these leadership meetings. You started these a year ago, and I feel like they've really helped us in terms of AGU staff providing really excellent guidance for us. I agree with Tanya, of course, every year it's going to seem like we need the same guidance because every year is the we or new we's, but or like maybe related guidance. But I think it's so helpful for us in having the chance to come together in this kind of, I would call it a less formal setting. It's still formal because we're all on Zoom, but less formal than, say, the council meetings. And it just feels relaxed and a way to learn and a way that you're supporting us, and also an opportunity for us to find ways to support one another, us meaning the section leadership. Not to make it a you and us situation, but just like emphasizing I guess even emphasizing that this venue breaks down that barrier some as well. The us you barrier. So thank you for not only the opportunity for feedback, but also these meetings.
Thanks, Kimberly. And it is a partnership. So yeah, that's the nature of how we want these meetings to be set up. So I'm glad to hear that that's hopefully working. And also, I wanted to reiterate something that Amber mentioned at the top of the call. You know, we are continuing to look at the member. I mean, at the member, but also in particular the section leader journey. And we've gone through an exercise where we're trying to map that out for ourselves as staff. But we do want to come out to some of you, many of you, and get your input to see if we have it right. You know, what does the journey look like for you, and how do we continue that partnership? So. So Kimberly, you've kind of opened the door for us to kind of come back to you and others to help us keep that conversation happening. Anyone else before we talk about fundraising? All right, well, let's go to Vicki, because again, you just saw in the results here, most of you want to hear about fundraising. So that's where we're at. So I'm going to turn it over to her. And also I'm going to re-emphasize, we want to hear from Vicki, but we also want to hear from you as sections, what you're doing and what's worked. So over to you.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Vicki Thompson. I'm the Assistant Director in the Development Department. I work on many things fundraising, but obviously a great joy of mine is getting to work with the section leaders year after year on your individual initiatives and programs. So Josh, if you just want to move to the next title slide. Great. So the first part of our conversation today, in our kickoff calls, I went through some of the ways that we can provide tools to you for fundraising. opportunities to chat together, to talk about your initiatives and things. But today, the first part of our conversation, and I hope it will be a conversation, as Rosa mentioned, and we want these calls to be an opportunity for you all to talk together and share ideas and share successes, or things that you tried and maybe didn't work as well. So the first part of our conversation today, I want to focus on general fundraising within your membership and community for your section's work. So this isn't necessarily sponsorships or corporate support, although obviously we can talk about it. But so I hope everyone will chime in. So Josh, if you want to move to the next slide. So just to sort of get our conversation going, I showed these numbers at our, the different kickoff calls that we had earlier this year with different sections. But I wanted to share today here to talk more specifically about this trending. So this is a higher level look, total donations to all section funds. So that's your 25 funds between 2018 and 2023. So, we often focus, this is a wider view than what we often focus on when discussing, we've been sort of discussing heavy, and we'll get to that in a minute, the section incentive program. But this is total raised, includes all gifts, regardless of their size and regardless of membership status or affiliation by the donor. So you can see that the dollars raised by sections increase and decrease from year to year, depending on many factors, which I hope we'll also talk about in a minute, in a slide or two. But these percentage changes that you can see here, we as a team monitor national fundraising and philanthropy trends. So these numbers that you see here mirror national trends. And we were lucky to see an increase in 2021, as you can see on the slide. But then the expected downturn after the pandemic came a little later than nationally was predicted, as uncertainty sort of remained into 2022. But you can see that we're ticking back up. And we know that we will continue to tick back up. We hope that we will continue to increase in this area as we're pursuing a much more targeted and directed and heavy general fundraising outreach to the AGU community, thoughtfully and segmented thoughtfully. But so that will also show increases in the section fundraising. So that's just sort of the trending. So you can see the overall picture for section fundraising. But do we have any questions on this slide before we move? I want to have a quick conversation with y'all about your own philanthropic feelings. Janet.
Yes, thanks
Hi.
very much. Hi. Were there any specific fundraising campaigns in 2021 that you can point to that elevated that, or is it just like across the board sort of thing?
I think just across the board. So I in 2021, now I'm blanking on the year that we did specific emails from each group of section leaders to sections specifically. So I believe that might have been in 2021, but not sure that is the reason. But we were lucky, I think, that overall, the pandemic began and people expected to see, they wondered what would happen and expected there to be, and there was some turmoil, right? But I think people were continuing to feel grateful and feeling that they could give and that they could support, and especially, support students that might have been feeling the impact of the pandemic differently or, in a stronger way. And I think, yes, we are still rebounding from the pandemic. Danny asked that in the chat. So yeah. Thanks. Any other questions before we move to the next slide? Okay, so this next slide, Josh, is our first opportunity that I hope you'll come off mute and share. So before we get into a conversation, like I said, about our specific activities that maybe the sections undertook over the past few years, I challenge us to consider why we give our time and why we give our financial donations to AGU and our sections. So this is a really important, these are some really important questions to think about and ask ourselves while we're considering what fundraising messages, what fundraising initiatives our membership might, our different memberships might want to reply to or might appeal to them, is to really think about, why do we support our sections? Why do we support AGU? We talked about this in the monthly leadership, is that the right name for it? The monthly leadership call in general, across the organization this month. So I hope we can spend a few minutes doing this. So does anybody want to kick us off? Why do you support AGU in your section? Why is it important to you? Kimberly.
I have myself gained a lot by being part of this community, just being among other scientists who are curious about scientists and who care about the climate. I got even more excited about AGU when it became clear how seriously they were including issues of DEI within the infrastructure. And then, so that's my story. My story of why I volunteer is that I want to be able to help other folks experience that, sort of regardless of the career stage, because, but especially early careers, I would say. And then, and I want to help AGU keep on going on these paths that I feel are so important with regards to climate intervention and DEI, and then also basic science. So I guess to support our scientists and also support as much as I can such a big organization doing good stuff. So I don't know how else to say that, but hopefully that's a good start.
That's really great, and that's a great expression of your passion for the organization and your section's work as well. Does anybody else want to share or describe an experience that you've had that was inspiring to be involved with an organization, even if it wasn't AGU? What drives you?
I could say something. Well, first of all, I served on another society before in a position of leadership, the American Physical Society. AGU and APS are very different in terms of organizations and organization. I have, for example, I'm seeing two very different aspects. Right now, I'm living through something that is very different from my previous experience. But I work in an area that is right at the interface of physics and geophysics. And I think I want to bring a little bit of each to both. Maybe it's too pretentious, but it's aspirational. I thought that, for example, AGU would be the section, Mineral and Rock Physics, would work, members of the executive committee would work very well together, work together. And as we did at the American Physical Society, but this is a little bit, it's a larger executive committee, more fragmented, each one with its own role, and not very integrated. I think this is something that, so in other words, I have an extremely positive view of AGU. It's a very dynamic society, extremely well managed, so I wanted to see more from inside and bring that vision to the American Physical Society as well. On the other hand, I see that the American Physical Society, a section the executive committee works very integrated, which is a little bit different from what happens in the AGU. But above all, it's because I am at the interface of two different fields and not really, you know, my research is right at the interface. So I think it's a desire to integrate both aspects of my research into at the society level. In the American Physical Society, I'm sort of fringe. In the American Geophysical Union, I'm more of a fringe. So serving is a way to make yourself, okay, this is introducing myself and somehow a new style. Not new, it's not new anymore, but it's still very limited. A style of research that is very essential to the mission of AGU. So so that's essentially what it is. I enjoyed very much working for the American Physical Society. It was a delight. And right now I'm still president-elect or vice president. So my role is still not well defined in the AGU, but I will have 2 years that I hope I will be able to be very effective. Yep.
Thanks, Renata.
And
Janice,
there are
did you-
other issues, and there are many issues. There are many issues of that I'm interested in. That these are specifics, but this is the overall interest. Yeah.
Thank you, Renata. I see Janice
Okay.
and Tracy, so you all want to go ahead?
Yeah, Renata, thank you for that. That was
Who is speaking?
this
Janice. Hi,
Janice.
Janice.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to thank you for that comment. We hear in multiple venues the fact that AGU science, whatever it is, it's writ large, right? We cover a lot of ground, literally and figuratively, and space. That it's becoming more and more transdisciplinary, that there are more and more opportunities for sciences to connect, not only within AGU sciences, but also in maybe closely related areas and some not so closely related. It's sort of interesting because I am currently in the process. I was asked to be a judge for the Arthur Fleming Awards for federal scientists. And they have interesting categories. They have basic science, they have applied science, and they have social science. And there's an assumption that all of those need to be a part of a winning application for this particular award. So, Renata, we need to learn from you too. I mean, this is, I hope you can sort of find your way, and you have a great team here, great staff to help you sort out what the roles are in AGU and how you can contribute. But I hope you'll educate us as well as to how we can attract and be relevant to scientists like you who conduct the kind of research and do the work that you're doing. So I just wanted to say that that was to me a very insightful comment and something that we hear more and more and more whenever we talk to either experts or people inside the field or outside the field. You're going to be a great role model for us, and so I appreciate you being involved.
Oh, thank you. I hope to contribute. I really do. Yeah, that's it for now.
And Tracy, I'm sorry, did you have your hand up earlier, or do we want to keep going?
I think we should keep going. I'm going to answer the question in the chat.
Sounds
Okay.
good. Thank you.
Great. So I challenge everybody to think about these questions and then also apply your answers as you're thinking about fundraising for your section. But I think we should keep moving. If we can go to the next slide, Josh. So as I mentioned in the kickoff calls, there were 9 sections that increased their total fundraising dollars raised in 2023 over dollars raised in 2022. Josh and I reached out to many of the section leaders in these groups to see if we could coordinate a conversation on this call, and everyone has a lot to do, I know. But so I thought we could still have the conversation, and maybe some of those leaders are on the call and can chime in. But I wanted to sort of go through, some of the ideas about what might have made these sections what was success for them last year? What did they do? What did they talk about? What are their members like, or what are their members' attitudes about giving? So, we posed these questions to those leaders. What did the sections do differently in 2023? Many of them that shared back talked about caregiver awards that are specifically focused on DEI topics, additional student travel grants, things like that in 2023. So I wondered if anybody on the call might want to share a little bit about what initiatives they had in 2023, not just ones that they specifically fundraised for, or perhaps just exciting things that y'all did in 2023 that you think your members were interested in. Let's see. I know that Kathy is on the call, and I know Jeff talked a little bit about.
And Allison has got her hand up.
Oh, do you have your hand up? Okay, then sorry, Kathy.
Allison, actually, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah.
Allison. Right.
That's okay. I mean, I'd be curious to see what our percent increase was for this section. But what we tried to do was communicate more about what we're doing with section funds. And,
Right.
Specifically, it was our second year of doing a caregiver award. And a lot of times when we were communicating those awards, we'd tell people, people would write and say, how do I support this? And I would say, donate to the section. And I definitely can think of 2 or 3 emails like that. So I think those types of initiatives, we've also focused more on early career events, like doing an early career mixer ahead of the fall meeting. Those kinds of things we tried to publicize more and say, like, this is what your section fund supports.
Great. Those are great things. And I think that's really, really allows people, opportunity and reason to respond. It's easy to see the results and the outcomes of programs like that. Anyone else have anything specific to share in 2023? Let's see. Okay. So then I also challenge you to think about what the culture of philanthropy within your membership might be. I know that I heard from one section leader recently over the weekend, actually, about how one of the things that they're thinking about is how many of the members in their section maybe are senior scientists and maybe are getting ready to retire, and thinking about how that might affect their messaging or thinking about how that might affect their results. Does anyone have any thoughts about that? I know in all different fields, whether it's academics, whether you work for the government, just feeling, the overall feeling and how people approach philanthropy is different across different sections. So I wonder if anyone has anything to share about that in your fields. Okay. Doesn't sound like it. Okay. So then also you might think about what your general engagement. So Allison mentioned reaching out and communicating about the programs that you're having and people responding and wanting to know how to support those programs. So, you might think about how your members are engaged with AGU in general, how engaged they feel with your section in general. Do you think they know what you're doing? Do you think they need more information about what you're doing? Go ahead, Tanya.
The issue that I find is that for generations, frankly, people have had a relationship with AGU. I give you my membership money, you give me fall meeting. And it's very difficult to have the volunteer section leaders change that culture. It has been the existing culture. And so we can advertise, and we do advertise, and AGU does a good job of providing, support for caregivers or support for travel. But there are, 25,000 people one way or another who need financial help getting to a very, very expensive meeting. And those people don't really understand why they should be giving more money at all. And it's a real hard ask of volunteer leaders to make that pitch.
Does anyone else have any thoughts on that? Yeah, I think that some of the ways that we could think differently about that is, just the continual sharing of the other things that AGU or that your section provides that maybe people didn't realize. So I know, the education section specifically is working on the Honor an Educator campaign, which specifically, Tanya, correct me if I'm wrong, helps educators get to meetings, correct?
The money is used towards our general travel funds, but it honors people's mentors or people
Right.
they know of with a certificate and an official thank you. So yes, but it is used for travel support.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, expressing and sharing all the information and the impact is really, hopefully, what will begin to help people see what else there is. So obviously people can continue to share. Oh, Suzanne, thank you.
Hi, I have a comment and then a question. First,
Sure.
I donate to about, I don't know, every professional organization I belong to. It's just part of my, who I am. So AGU, GSA, Geochemical Society, etc. But I think Tanya has a good point that people feel like, man, it costs a lot of money. I pay a lot to go to the AGU meeting. What else, why else should I be giving? And I agree with her that it needs to be a more general conversation with, and I like the idea of connecting your donation will get used for caregiver awards or for student travel. It has to be a really specific place that it goes, because there's a lot of conversation about why is AGU so expensive and the meeting so
The
expensive.
meeting.
And for instance, our student group doesn't want to have an official function at AGU because they feel like it's too expensive, and they, we can just go find a pub and hang out in a pub somewhere at no cost to low cost. So linking a fee with or a donation with a particular place that it goes.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on this conversation? I want to make sure that we have time to talk about the incentive program. Okay, so you can keep putting thoughts in the chat and we'll either get to respond to them in real time or after the call. Let's move on to the section incentive program conversation. Okay, so let's just go to the first slide and we'll talk about the incentive program. So you've all seen this, hopefully seen the results from 2023. Just want to go through quickly the current setup of the section incentive program. Essentially, any primary member of your section that donates $50 or more in 2023, as an example, to any AGU fund, so not just to your section fund, but to any AGU fund, is counted sort of as a participation point. And then depending on what percentage of your primary members have donated $50 or more, you get a financial award based on that. So if 5% of your primary members do that, you get $1,000 and it goes up from there. So just quickly, the purpose of the section incentive program, I think, is to reward sections who engage their members in fundraising for the benefit of both AGU sections and the overall cultural philanthropy of AGU in general in the community. So we all saw this. So if we want to move to the next slide, Josh. This is showing the trending of how many sections received any incentive award since the program's inception in 2015. So we, this year and last year, we were, I think, similarly concerned about the trend down that we're all looking at. And that's one of the reasons that we're having this conversation today. So in 2015, we had 4 sections that qualified for an award in some amount. And then that shot up in 2016 to 14, leveled out to 8, and has sort of gone up. So 10, 18, down to 9, and then 1 in each of the past 2 years. One section has received an award in each of the past 2 years. So that's the trending. So I wonder if anybody has any thoughts about sort of the timing of the trends, why, the sort of uptick in 2020 of those size donations to different funds, or the uptick in 2016, I think was likely, the different sections saw the program, understood the program by 2016 and maybe talked about it more. Any thoughts on this, or we could just go right into our conversation, our larger conversation. Go ahead, Rosa.
Yeah, and I'm looking, I was looking at I think you can probably start off with the item in the chat.
Sure, let's see it.
About, from Brad, I think, about sponsorships. I'm not sure if
Many
you
of
saw
the
that.
how big the pile of money is to the activities that many. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that's a little bit of a different conversation than what we intended to have on this call. But section sponsorships, there's a handful of sections that work on sponsorships each year. The highest, the buckets for section sponsorships are $1,000, $2,500, and $5,000. And I would say that most sections are functioning at the $1,000 and $2,500 level of sponsorship gifts. And they're mostly talking to, I think, to their potential sponsors about their activities in general, and aren't necessarily receiving funding for specific initiatives.
I can
Go ahead,
speak
Brad.
to that a little.
Yeah, great.
On your chart, nonlinear geophysics had, and granted, we should work to move this number up, but we had 4 people that gave above $50. We're not even going to be able to cover AV expenses with that. With the 200 primary members, it seems like a better bet for us would be to look for sponsorships.
Absolutely.
But it's really unclear. Like if I'm Ball, I know why I want to give money to atmospheric sciences and a lot of it. It's really unclear. I'd love to hear from those bigger sections about how we might develop sponsorships to help increase that that operating budget. So maybe one day we could pay for AV for a meeting.
Right.
I don't think it's appropriate, but I'm sort of curious how much the sponsorship makes up of what they can do. Like we would love to have an early career scientist seminar series, but we don't have the capability.
Right. Does anyone want to share just a clarifying point on the chart that we were just looking at, just to clarify that those 4 gifts or that you saw for near surface, those aren't gifts to your section necessarily. The number of gifts to your section or the dollar amount raised by your section is likely very different than what you can suppose from that chart. Those are just gifts made by members of your section do anything.
Yeah,
So we
exactly.
could talk, but that doesn't dilute your question, just to make sure
Yeah.
that that's a clarifying point. Does anybody have any thoughts for Brad, or we can maybe talk about that more on AGU Connect or
Right.
other threads, so that we can continue the incentive conversation.
Yeah. I think was that your last slide, Vicky? Because we
No,
can.
I just had a slide with some questions on it that
Okay,
we
yeah,
can
go
consider.
ahead. Yeah, because I'm also seeing a few things in the chat, and we've got
Yeah.
about 5 or so minutes left. So yeah.
Yeah, so if we just want to move to the next slide. So I'm putting actually the link this morning. I sent everyone an email, all the section presidents, president-elects, perhaps past presidents. So I urge you to share that email with people or your co-leaders that work on fundraising in your section. These questions are in this, I'm calling it a survey link. It's a form you can fill out to share information about your use of the incentive program. So I hope you'll use that, or you can just email me directly. My email is victoriathompson at agu.org. And we can, so that we can collect all this information and think more broadly about the section incentive program. So I think, I'm not sure how best to use the last 5 minutes, if we should talk about through these questions, or if there's anything that seems really pertinent in the chat. Tracy, go ahead.
I think we should
Yeah,
answer Nani's last question, her question
Sure,
about
let's see.
where the money goes, so that
Yeah.
everybody is really clear on what happens with the funding that's raised by the section. She's asking if where does it, funds raised by the section, where do they go? So let's answer that question, because it's a very easy answer.
Oh, sure. So our giving forms have drop down fund, have a drop down menu where you can choose where your gift goes, and any money given, when you choose that fund, that is where the money goes. That's what the money is used for. So if a member makes, for your section as an example, if a member makes $100 gift to your section fund, chooses that in the drop down, $100 goes into your account, and you can use $100 on your programming and initiatives. Does that answer your question?
Hopefully it does. We do seem to have a few things in the chat, and we've got about 5 minutes left. So I'm kind of looking through to see if anyone wants to maybe chime in with their questions, or maybe, and I also see some traffic here with Lexi. I'm not sure if Lexi wanted to jump in with anything as well.
Hi there. I'm in a slightly noisy spot, so if this is disturbing, I can go off again. But I just wanted to say, like any of the questions, and I'm sure Tracy and Janice would be happy to answer some of this as well. But we have scientists who actually work with us to talk to Congress about funding science agencies, and they're able to do that as long as they're operating on their personal time. And that's much more like directly focused on big picture federal funding than what we're talking about here. The fundraising that you all are talking about today is for the science work of AGU. So it's really not about lobbying. And then on top of that, we are not actually a lobbying organization, as the IRS determines that. We are a 501c3, and we are allowed to do a small amount of lobbying under those restrictions. So I don't think there should be any ethical considerations against the type of fundraising that we're talking about here. But it's always a good practice to talk to the ethics office within your institution if you have any concerns at all. And I'm very happy to answer more questions. I dropped my email into the chat, so please feel free to reach out if there's more. And as I say, Tracy or Janice might have more.
No, that's similar to the answer that I gave to someone earlier. So thank you for that, Lexi. I worked at the Smithsonian, so I understand the process. And if you talk to the HR in your area, they will be able to tell you. I don't think that AGU's work and your volunteerism with AGU has any impact on your relationship with your employer, but please check with them. Absolutely, if someone makes a donation and they choose your section, that money comes to you your section to decide what to do with those funds raised.
Okay, thank you. Vicky, were you going to say something, or I can just kind of start looking in the chat here?
Yeah, I
Thanks.
was just, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Did someone just start to speak?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I was just noticing Lisa's last comment. I think if you have suggestions about the drop down, you know, we're always here to hear suggestions for clarity, especially if you're using the AGU process or form and you don't quite think that it makes perfect sense. But we just redesigned our form. It's pretty standard. So I see some more coming through. Okay, just before, it looks like people are jumping off. So just you know, from my perspective, I'm dropping again the link to the survey about the section incentive program in general so that we could get your feedback and really think about what this could be so that we can continue, so that we could go back to ticking up or go back to providing you the benefit of the program, because that's really what it's for. I'm also putting a link. You can have personal one-on-one meetings with me about your specific fundraising initiatives. I'd love to help. And also my email address. So you could use the Calendly link or we can just email. I can also come to any meeting that you already have on the books with your leadership.
All right. Thanks, Vicky. We really appreciate it. And I still see a lot of stuff in the chat. So what I would say is that we'll continue to look at this and answer, but it also looks like we may want to have this as a continuing conversation in our monthly meetings. Vicky usually comes to all of them, so we can continue to ping her for this. And I think, Josh, you had one last reminder that before we lose any more folks that you wanted to chime in on.
Yeah, thank you. As most of you know, the deadline to submit your sections committee rosters was on March 15th. There are still quite a few sections who have not notified me yet that their roster has been completed. So please let me know as soon as possible. And then this is important because the honors review period will begin very soon. And then prior to being able to release nominations to the committees for review, staff must onboard the committees and program the review system. So please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. It looks like, depending on what clock I look at, we're at the top of the hour and folks have dropped off, but let us know, you know, my usual pitch, let us know what topics you want to hear in the upcoming meetings. We have one at the end of April. And also we have the question from the section leader survey where you already gave us some good ideas. So if you feel like you did not get your question or your comment addressed, you know, certainly email Josh. I think you all know how to reach him and we'll get information to the right person, or if you've got some other questions post call. And as I mentioned, you will be getting the recording of this and the PowerPoint we used probably today or tomorrow morning. Anything else? Anyone? All right, thanks for this robust discussion. And really, please continue to partner with us, get us your questions and ideas. See you soon. Thank you. And I think you can stop the recording, Josh. And then we've got a few more folks who